Hello everyone. After a very long time, we are back with our discussion on the Hindu editorial. So here we are with the perspective on the West Asia conflict. Okay, so they have given these two things in the editorial as well as in the opinion piece. So let us first do the editorial discussion. Okay, so what is the title of today's editorial? So you can see the Iran war intensifies India's strategic challenge. Okay, so the ongoing war between Iran and Israel vis-a-vis US, how they are going to create a strategic challenge for India. That is what this editorial is trying to highlight. So let us dive into this. Okay. So the Iran war is not a war to eliminate the imminent threat to the United States. Neither is it a preemptive strike to stop Iran from striking Israel or American assets, nor is it a war to stop the rebuilding of Iran's nuclear program. It is not even a war to destroy Iranian ballistic missiles, eliminating an ideology. It is a war to destroy the ideology which drives the Iranian government. And as Israel and the US claim, regime change is a path to achieve it. The US has joined Israel to actively prosecute the war by owning this idea. Iran is seen as the great disruptor of West Asia. Israel wants to end Iran's proxy war, which it sees as an existential threat. This means Asif jitting Iranian support to non-state actors in the region that are inimical to Israel. This again means eliminating ideology. Again mean eliminating ideology as opposed to religion, effectively a regime change. Iran has Iran has consistently nurtured and used non-state actors to wage a proxy war against Israel. In fact, some non-state actors have quite literally become a state within a state and destabilized them. The Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon occupies parts of Lebanon and has even helped up the formation of the government. Okay, so Hezbollah, you must have heard this news. This is a militia based in the Lebanon, which is supported by the Iran. Okay, the Iranian backed then comes another militia is the Iranian backed Houthis in Yemen that have also been backed by Iran. You can see have carved out a large chunk of Yemen. Houthi missiles hit Saudi and Aramco installations in 2021, serving as a catalyst for Saudi Arabia and Iran to restore diplomatic relations in 2023. Iraqi Shia non-state militia are also supported by Iran. It was Iran's support for Hamas' brutal attacks of October 7, 2023, which exposed Iran's proxies to fierce Israeli retaliation and eventual degradation. Ironically, Hamas itself was initially propped up by Israel, later by Qatar to weaken Yasser Arafat and the Palestine Liberation Organization, split the Palestinians and discredit the Palestinian Authority. When this writer lived in Gaza, the co-founder and spiritual guru of Hamas, Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, was released in 1997 and sent to Gaza by Israel precisely for this. Iran's ideology of uh, Iran's ideology of exporting instability unnerved the region, especially the Gulf monarchies where public opinion is controlled. Consequently, under American prodding, the Gulf states began signing the Abraham Accords to normalize relations with Israel to stabilize region at the cost of even the Palestinian issue. If Israel and the US are going after Iran again, when their June 2025 bombing campaign effectively buried the Iranian nuclear enrichment process, then it can only be for a much bigger goal, elimination of Iranian radical ideology and regime change. The attacks on Iran have caused unprecedented devastation on military and security apparatus as well as oil and other infrastructure, hoping to break the cohesion of governance structure and provoke the people for overthrow the government. US President Donald Trump even promised to make Iran great again. Or can regime change be affected by mere air bombings of military and civilian targets? This has not happened so far, and Israelis and Americans are reluctant to put boots on the ground. The Iranians, having borne the brunt of June 2025 war, are prepared for the worst. Since Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei never tried to hide and in fact welcome a martyrdom, it did not require special intelligence information to kill him. And a special okay, so anticipating such assassinations, Iran has decentralized authority across multiple arms of government and decided that the period of strategic re-establishment, as in 2025, is over. Facing an asymmetry in firepower, Iran has widened the war to include regional targets beyond US bases in the Gulf, making this conflict as much political as it is military. It has exposed the US security umbrella over the Gulf states, shown the Gulf states as vulnerable, and put the energy security of many countries at serious risk. The pressure is clearly on US to end the war early. Uh, Israel's view of the in-game differs from that of the US. Israel has no computations about pursuing a purely military campaign regardless of the internal region and political fallout, whereas America cannot afford to leave behind an Iran in turmoil without a political settlement for the region. This raises the hope that Iran campaign will be shorter. America's mixed messaging. Mr. Trump dislikes getting bogged down in long conflicts. He stabilized the situation in Venezuela while working with the same but more valuable regime after abducting its president, and in Syria by sanctifying a former ISIS terrorist leader as president. He is eyeing a quick regime change in Cuba now. Last year, he reached a deal with the Houthis to prevent attacks on American ships. With Iran threatening to attack ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz, Mr. Trump is discovering that West Asia is not Latin America and Iran is not Venezuela. The war is not ending as quickly as Mr. Trump would like. Hence, the mixed messaging from the US whether to stop and declare victory or to prolong the conflict, risking global economic disruption, regional and American casualties, and political resistance both in Congress and among the public. The US has just requested India to buy more Russian oil to stabilize prices. The Americans getting bogged down in West Asia can only gladden China and Russia since the US will have less bandwidth to focus on them. With each day of relentless attacks, China's case for taking over the Taiwan grows stronger, while Russia's logic in the Ukraine war is reinforced. Rising oil prices are good for Russia, but not China. But a distracted US is not good news for India, which is hoping to attract greater US attention after the trade deal and find a place in the worldview of Mr. Trump. India and a regional policy. India's role as an observer at Mr. Trump's first Board of Peace meeting in Washington, D.C. Indicated a welcome willingness to take a more proactive role in the region. While India immediately reached out to meet the needs of the Indian community in the Gulf, it slipped back to default mode when Khamenei was assassinated and when an Iranian Navy vessel leaving Indian shores was torpedoed by US submarine in the high seas. Yes, India has excellent bilateral relations with the Gulf, Israel, and many regional countries. But with India's stakes in the region, including in Iran, a more balanced regional policy is essential at the very least to manage contradictions between friends, such as recent schism between Saudi Arabia and Emirates. Regional policy is much more than an aggregation of many bilateral relations. Whether in tackling West Asia, Europe, Central Asia, or Southeast Asia. The Iran War is the American way of attempting to reorder West Asia, though it has only exposed the inability of the US to protect the Gulf states. Mr. Trump has reordered the transatlantic alliance amicably when the Europeans caved in to everything that he asked. The US attempt to reorder its relations with Russia met with Russian President Putin's resistance. The world will soon witness a reordering of US-China relations when Mr. Trump and Jinping meet soon. An event being watched anxiously by Japan, South Korea, India, and of course Taiwan to see whether Mr. Trump will end up making not MAGA but make China great again. Make China great again. Yes, MAGA. The strategic and security architecture of region will now have to be rewritten. Ironically, Iran has effectively pushed the region even deeper into America's arms. Whether China or Russia can offer counter-security arrangements is debatable. Israel will continue to be a predominant force in the region, but others will also benefit, such as Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and even Pakistan. With a strong Iran out of the way, their ambitions and stock will rise to fill the regional space. This is not good news for India, with its strategic space constricted by both the US and China. The Iran war is having a much greater impact on India than it anticipated. India's neighborhood had just become that much tougher to negotiate. Okay, so this much you can understand that this is going to impact India severely. Okay, so the ongoing war will have a much greater impact on India than it had anticipated, forcing New Delhi to navigate complex regional dynamics. Now let us see this one. The lesson is national security cannot be outsourced. Okay. It is the second week of war since strikes by the United States and Israel on Iran began on February 28, citing existential and imminent threats. A joint offensive by two of the world's most lethal and technologically advanced militaries was expected to crush Iran quickly, but Iran has struck back hard, hitting targets once thought safe or untouchable. Why has Iran targeted them? How does it change the nature of war? These targets are the various American military bases and assets spread over the Gulf region in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Oman. These attacks combined with strikes on critical energy infrastructure such as oil fields, uh, gas fields, and perhaps most crucially, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz have thrown the entire region into panic. Though questions are being asked, especially on the security guarantees that America has been promising the region for over decades, there is a sense of disbelief and helplessness in the region, witnessing the bubble of externally sponsored security blow away in no time. Many are questioning the logic of it all, while others are already looking at alternative security options for the future. The Gulf Security Arrangement. As the war continues, there are reports that the missile interceptors in Gulf countries have run out, with the US unable to replenish them, privatizing the limited availability of these critical defensive systems for Israel. Why are Gulf countries so helpless in defending themselves? The answer lies in a security arrangement worked out in the region through America almost 45 years ago. After Iranian Revolution in 1979-80, the region's monarchies felt threatened and the US promised to defend Gulf stability against external threats. In his 1980 State of Union address, in reaction to the 1979 Iranian Revolution, US President Jimmy Carter had assured the region. and warned that any outside attempt to control the Persian Gulf would be regarded as an assault on vital interests of the US, and that such an assault would be repelled by any means necessary, including military force. There were several more initiatives later. At the US Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) summit in Riyadh in May 2017, proposed regional alliance in the form of sorry, an Arab NATO or Middle East strategic alliance MESA was mooted, including the GCC nations and Egypt and the Jordan. It failed to take off due to the diplomatic blockade on Qatar in June 2017 and after the Israeli missile strike on Doha, Qatar, targeting the Hamas leadership in September 2025. The US had assured ironclad security guarantees to Qatar, akin to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization NATO Charter. However, all past US efforts and expenses have come to nothing. The US has failed to protect the Gulf countries, and the ongoing conflict demonstrates that its security guarantees are illusory, ineffective, and unreliable. The Gulf states can no longer count on American assurances for their future safety. What India can learn? These are crucial lessons. For decades, India has been one of the top importers of arms. The the turning point came with the Kargil War in 1999, which exposed both critical shortages and vulnerabilities arising from import dependencies. One of the key recommendations of the Kargil Review Committee was achieving self-reliance in military equipment. However, it was only after 2014 that Atmanirbharta or self-reliance actually took shape. Over the past decade, the import percentages have gone down and indigenous productions have taken off, with private players being encouraged and even incentivized. In financial year 2024-25, Indian exports touched a record 23,620 and 622 crore, approximately $2.78 billion, while import percentage came down to 25% to 30%. Major weapon platforms such as BrahMos missile, Tejas fighter aircraft, artillery guns, and ammunition are in demand internationally. While several foreign origin systems are now being manufactured in India, looking ahead, the war in Iran has many bitter lessons for the region and the world. Reports suggest that Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar are not only considering reducing their investment commitments in the US, but are also exploring options to remove American military bases from their soil. If this happens, it will be the most transformative change in the regional security architecture since its inception almost 50 years ago. How this will unfold and what the future Gulf security architecture will look like remains to be seen. One thing is clear: a lesson from this war is that national security cannot be bought or outsourced. Yes, that is the thing. Now, let us see anything else which we can discuss. For sure, we cannot discuss everything, but we certainly discuss something. Okay, let us try to see how the war in Iran threatens to spill over. Iran's clerical, uh, Iran's clerical regime has been brutal. Clerical regime, you understand? Clerics are those people who are like a priest. Okay, in Islam. Okay, so Maulana is nothing but the clerics. So Iran's clerical regime has been brutal, yet whatever the reasons for the joint Israel-US attack on Iran, and several reasons have been proffered by the Washington, and the strikes on Iran are not about helping the Iranian people overthrow a aggressive regime. They are not about fighting for women's rights, and they are probably not even about Iran's nuclear program. Uh, there has been no clarity about why US allowed Israel to push it into a war with Iran. For its part, Iran has responded with a flurry, fury that was not anticipated, widening the arc of its response to Gulf the whole region. that region extend to India's borders, and so this regional war is now Delhi's problem as well. Announcing major combat, announcing major combat operations in Iran, U.S. President Donald Trump turned to the great proud people of Iran and said, "When we are finished, take over your government." A week later, it is clear that when Israel and the US are done with targeting the regime, there will not be much of Iran left. Lesson for history. History demonstrates that democracy, human rights, and the rule of law have not been introduced into a region by the business end of a cruise missile. There is a little reason to believe that Iran will prove to be the first. Afghanistan and the Iraq are testimony to the fallacy of believing that nation building can be tagged on to the other goals. In Afghanistan, the invasion by the US led International Security Assistance Force was provided a legal cover through a strong-worded UN Security Council's resolutions that condemned the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. The invasion was presented as self-defense and for rooting out Al-Qaeda from Afghanistan and overthrowing the Taliban regime. The decisions that subsequently committed ISAF to nation building in that it represented a classic case of mission creep. Democracy and women's rights were added to a desirable extras, not as the focus of the regional intervention. Unsurprisingly, when the Americans and the British pulled out 20 years later, the Taliban were able to renew their deeply fundamentalist and patriarchal hold on society. This is not disabling; it is betrayal. I think we are not interested in discussing all these things, so we'll stop here. Okay, thank you so much.